Today is David Gindy, and
Yes.
David's a neighbor and a friend, and David's going to be talking about memorabilia. You've been collecting rare memorabilia for quite a few decades.
Quite a while, yes. I mean, from documents and autographs, a little
So,
everything.
so here's a really neat thing.
Yeah.
When you were 7 years old,
Mhm.
you bought your first piece. What was that?
Well, the first autograph piece.
First
Yeah, 'cause
autograph piece.
I guess I was a collector, but it was actually a James Madison free-framed cover. And the reason it was, I was kind of a stamp collector at the time. And free franks are envelopes that are sent by presidents or important people at the time, senators and people had the right to send through the post office free by signing in the corner. And when I saw James Madison and I was learning about him in school at the time, I said, wow.
Age 7, that's what grade? I mean, yeah, what grade is that?
Second grade.
Second grade, folks. All right.
Learning about the first 10 amendments. And I said, wow, James Madison, we're talking about him, and there is a real signed piece. And that's what's interesting about autographs is, I bought it, but obviously it's not just the signature. It's really the story. So it's the story behind these items that make them exciting and unusual.
And we're going to get to your story in a minute. Tell us about where that piece is now.
I still have that, actually.
Folks, he still has it. You're over the age of 50.
Right.
So he's had it for at least 4 decades. At least
Right.
4 decades. Probably,
Yes.
probably 5. Almost.
Yeah, almost.
All right, so we got that
Not
narrowed
yet,
down
not yet.
to a few years.
Don't move me too quickly.
So David Gindy, tell us about some of the memorabilia that you've collected and that you have
Right.
available for sale. And the collectibles auction is the name of the auction.
Yeah, well, it's One of a Kind Collectibles.
All right.
One of a Kind Collectibles, and you can go to oneofakindcollectibles.com or even Oak Auctions, which is short, OAK auctions.com.
So your story
Right.
is that years ago, I'm from the outside looking in,
Sure.
before you were age 7,
Mm-hmm.
were you doing magic?
Yeah, well, right at the same age. Actually, and you know that side of it, which is that I also I was a performer doing magic and was doing shows for children and at that time and adults. And I was making some money. Actually, I was getting paid, hourly, and that's how I was able to.
And how old were you?
I was 7 years old.
7.
Yeah.
Most kids were playing on their bikes. And
Yeah, I'm thinking in retrospect.
Did they have
because
bicycles
I have 2
back
of my
then?
own, and I'm like, I don't see them working just yet. But yeah, we were on bicycles. I remember even working for the Herald at the time and getting the newspapers and delivering them on
Is
the
that right?
bike. Oh yeah. I mean, well, a little older. I think I was probably about 9 or 10 at that time. But yeah, I guess I always liked doing different things, and I was earning money doing magic shows, which
people were paying you.
people were paying me
You're
to do
age
shows.
7, 8, 9
surprisingly.
years old.
Yes.
You learned magic, and how did you learn that?
Well, that's
Were you
kind
on
of a story in
YouTube then?
itself. I loved magic. Like, I mean, most children, I think every boy or every girl, at some point maybe has an interest in something like that. And I got a magic kit, and I liked it so much that my mom and my dad took me to a show at the Carnival Hotel at the time. Which was Rich Yardy was there, and who was a famous magician, and he was performing at the Carnival Hotel. And I saw him at the show, and I met him backstage. My mom kind of
How did she arrange that?
Well, my mom probably knows she was in entertainment as herself. She always loved that, and she just basically asked. And back then, things were easier, I think, in a lot of ways. And said, "Oh, my son loves magic. He'd love to meet you." And they brought me backstage. And Rich Yardy, was a very famous magician at the time, was touring with another group of magicians, said, sure. And he met me, and I showed him a couple tricks because I was doing some magic. And he said, do you want
So here's almost a master
Yeah.
magician.
Yes, he was.
And with you, 7, 8, 9 years old.
Correct. And he actually said, do I want to be on the show? And that he let me be a little part. So I was.
So here you are, almost 45 plus years later,
Yeah.
talking about a person that made a huge difference in
Yeah.
your development.
Well, that probably definitely. I mean, when it came to the magic, and that's something that I still pursue, not as a magician. I did do that. I even worked in illusions and things of that nature. But I actually, created the camp programs and the programs
We
for
can say it,
children.
magic camp.
Magic camp and science camp. I created, different programs with the fun camps. So that's always been, I guess I've always been lucky that not only do I get to do what I was doing at the age of 7, which was magic, and I was doing love science and all these different things, but I also was a collector. And so I created both of them, became my job.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I see
to
you
this
brought
day.
some things today. So why don't you tell us about them?
Well, yeah, I brought a couple things, and even on Instagram, I try to tell about these different things or show pictures. But this was some interesting items. Now, as an auction with one of a kind collectibles, I get different items in all the time. We just got this in, and what's really interesting about it, and I don't know, if we can get a close up of it here. Oh, it's right over here, and let me show you here. This picture right over here, where I got my finger on, there's two pictures. One is Sidney Chaplin, and the other is Charles Chaplin. And that is Charlie Chaplin right here. And this is his first play. Actually, it was with Sherlock Holmes. He was a page boy in it, and he got great reviews. He's only 14 years old in it. It's 1903, and it's actually a signed photo. And from doing some research, this is the earliest signed photo of Charles Chaplin in existence.
So inquiring minds want to know,
Right.
how do you know so much about these autographs and this memorabilia?
Well, like you said, I've been doing it for over 40 years. And there are a lot of things to look for to know that they're real and everything else. Something like this could be a little difficult because you'd say, well, how do you know that's signed by him? And how do you know that autograph is correct? Because, of course, it changed over time. Well, luckily, I was able to find a printed signature version almost on the same card. It's a little different version, same period. And when I mean printed, I don't mean it was actually signed. It actually had a printed signature that maybe he gave his fans, but the signature also matches well. And it's very interesting because it would have been, this is the type of thing that it's very hard for, it's not something someone would find easily. That actually took quite a while to even find an example of the signature from him.
Are you like that kind of expert that gets called in on the show called Pawn Stars?
Pawn Stars. Well,
right?
Actually, yes, all the time. Not to Pawn Stars, but people have collections, be it that it's autographs or if it's coins, which we can go into, or books, or I specialize in all of those different parts of the field. And so when it comes to art, autographs, documents, rare books, and coins, after 40 years of doing it and dealing with as much material that comes through our doors, you become kind of an expert. You start to know right off the bat, is that paper correct? Is the ink correct? Is the signature right? Is the right fountain pen? Is it a ballpoint pen? Is it, is it pencil? And all these different factors. Is the paper right from the period? Is it an 18th century paper, 19th century,
and all
16th
that.
century? Well, I've been studying it for quite a while, and the more you deal with, the more that
That's for you.
That was for me. But the more you deal with, it's probably someone with another autograph. But the more you deal with, the more you have in your hands, the more you learn. Right. And so, just like we're talking about, that's Charles Chaplin, right? But then you can go into something like this, which is on parchment. I put it on plastic that way, it's easier to show and everything. And if you look over on the bottom here, right over here, yes, you'll see that's the signature of Thomas Jefferson. And then right over here is James Madison, which we were just speaking about. So this is a Jefferson Madison ship's papers, basically. It's called a ship's passport. And it will tell you the ship's name and everything, and the weight and the pass and the captain. And also what's interesting is if you notice the top is scalloped. It's called a scallop top. And these are, all documents, there's a lot of unusual documents and beautiful. This happens to be, when I say this type of document, which is called the ship's passports, happens to be one of the most beautiful documents, I think, as far as for presidential.
And how was that used by the ship's captain?
This was actually interesting enough. This was kept by like you said, the ship's captain would actually have the top of it. Now, this most people don't know. Very, very few people really know why it's cut like that. That really is a key. And what would happen is this was actually a square, or more, yes, straight. They would cut it, and the ship would keep the key in his ship's box, in his master box, in his place. And then this would be kept by a port. And so when they would come to the port, they could actually match it up.
And how would the port get that?
Well, the port would have this in their files, and the key would be kept by the ship. And the key being that top portion.
And so at some point they were together, and the port would cut it and give. So this is your key to come back.
That's correct. So it's kind of interesting, and to prove that this was the correct one and everything for that ship. So it's kind of an interesting piece, even though you never see the key. I've never seen one in all the years, and But the document itself, of course, that wasn't signed. This is what most people, these would be signed by Jefferson or.
And how old is this document?
Oh, well, this is going to be 17. Let's see, 1,803. So this is 1803. But they're mostly, they're from the 1798 period, I was going to say, to going into the 1830s, 40s. They changed the document format as time progressed. And but one of these things, you don't have to worry too much about a document like this. So when I worry about authenticity is that you have the seal here, you have the parchment, the printing. There's so much to go on to instantly say, oh, there's no question. The only thing interesting about these documents is sometimes the signatures will be very light because on the parchment, the quill, the ink didn't sometimes.
And you could actually see how it was folded.
Yeah, you can see how this one was folded and everything like that. So that's that's an interesting document, and I think it's a beautiful document. As far as the vignettes and everything.
So if they're collectors, they people buy different things like art and this sort of art collectible. And do people display this, generally speaking?
Yes. Well, many people really do appreciate their documents and autographs and want them on walls. I'm sure you might have walked into a doctor's office, a lawyer's, or a collector per se at their house, and they would have on their walls framed. But you do have to be careful with it. So there's this balance where you want to enjoy what you have. And it's not just necessary to show people, but it's also because that's why you got it. You really enjoy it. And you want to say the story behind it. Each piece, that piece was by a captain, and he was on a ship with 12 guns, and and he went through the Mediterranean, and some ships, they're moving for whaling, and some ships.
So somebody might see this piece, go look it up, find out about it, and say, that is a great story. I want to be able to get it and to tell the story.
That's the point. That's what I was saying before, too, is that I think a lot with the documents and autographs, even though it might not be right out there in the front, the truth is it's the story behind these items that make them quite exciting. And the story behind, of course, who signed them.
But so if you ever watch Shark Tank, they come and they do their presentation, and then they say, I want to hear your story.
Right.
And how they got to wherever that was.
Correct.
Yes. So you have another piece over there.
Oh yeah, we have it's dealing in all.
Inquiring minds want to know. Let's see them.
These are this is a Grover Cleveland, but what's neat about it is, as you can see, it's kind of a large signed photo as president. And I've had, we have these in different presidents that they do have the larger size. Ulysses Grant, I've even had them this large before, and famous people like Alexander Graham Bell. But the larger size photos, of course, are rare.
Well groomed, by the way.
Yeah, it was better than I think he was doing okay, and you can see he has that look, that presidential look, hopefully. And he signed it right here on the bottom and everything. And so signed photos is another thing, that we deal with in photography. There's all types of different things that,
So do lots of people go get these framed and then?
Yes.
So let's see. So you get something like this and then you go to a frame shop and you sort of figure it out. And people take their hard-earned money and they've looked a long time for this, and then they take it and they put it into a frame shop, and then hope you get it back.
Well, the framing, okay, that's an interesting point. In my experience, the framing never makes the value more. In a lot of cases, since we do deal online and different places, a lot of people ask me to take it out of the frame before I send it. A, they don't want it to hurt. And second of all, framing is kind of particular to the person who's framing it. Someone might like a black frame. Someone might like an old wood frame. So the thing about framing is you do put it. The other thing is we were talking about documents and how to keep them. Truthfully, all documents should not be in the light. Light will affect everything. It will fade over time. So in a way, you might have something that's 200 years old, 250, and you're actually hurting it by putting it in. By the way,
where we have old newspapers, I have the lights deliberately really low. And even when they're really low, I can see the difference. Because those newspapers were in an oak box for 40 years.
Right. And that's kind of the thing, that light will hurt everything. I mean, they do have UV plexiglass framing, for the glass, and you do have ways, but you never want to have direct light, at least. And even fluorescent light and different lights will affect the framing. And we were talking about documents and things. Now, this one has a little staining to it, but this is a different type of document too. That doesn't mean that it should have stains. It's just I'm pulling this one up real quickly, but you can see that this is an appointment. It's a military appointment. So the vignettes are different and everything else. And this is also signed by a president. Now, also, it happens to be Grover Cleveland, but you can see, when I say the vignettes, is the work of art that's on them. And so all these documents have interesting, an interesting look to them, and it depends on what your preference is and maybe what you want to collect.
So do you, with your clients, I'm sure you've had many for years, is there a certain genre that folks like to collect in?
Yes, well, that's why you can see that it's eclectic in a sense. First, we showing you Charles Chaplin, and then we're showing you Thomas Jefferson, and then and then there's things like this, which is Beatles, which of course Beatles is very collectible, and this is actually an original door tag. Card tag, excuse me, and it says August 16th, 1966, and it's hang this on your vehicle. And then in here, I also have.
Would you say how much the parking was? Show everybody.
Yeah. Oh, it was pretty expensive at the time. It was $1.
Okay. All right.
And it says, but it's interesting. It does say lock your car, remove valuables, and take key on the back. So I guess they were even careful back then.
Yes.
But then on top of that, it's interesting because I have the original ticket from that event. So this was from the same person who attended the event, which happened to be one of their last performances. And you can see they had their 2 tickets and the pictures of the Beatles on them and everything like that. And you have the 4.
I know somebody saying, well, how much is that?
Well, actually, everything has, like you said, there are prices. Now, some of this material, what's great about it is it's unique. This is a little different. It's not quite as unique. It's rare, but you will find tickets of similar, or you'll find door passes, parking passes and things like that. But they are kind of valuable. Some tickets can go for many, many thousands of dollars. These tickets, believe it or not, the pair goes for about $750.
For those.
Yeah, because it is their last performance. And then this is actually rarer than the tickets. Because if you think about it, when you went, not you, if you went to this show, but yeah, when many people go to the shows or the rock and roll or thing, they might have taken the tickets and it might have kept it, might have put it away in their, in their wallet or in their top drawer. But how many people kept the parking pass for the day? So it takes a different person who's like, oh, I'm going to keep the parking pass. And I've had pieces of gum, literally gum, that the Beatles, George Harrison was chewing. And then someone would have a little piece of paper and they'd write, this is the gum that George Harrison chewed, and things like that, and tobacco, like the cigarettes that they would use.
So for the person that just is relatively new to this, they just want to have a piece, they want to be in love with it.
Right.
Whether they pay 10 or 20 or 30% more, it's like, that's not the issue. The issue is, do you love it? And can you afford to buy whatever?
I think that's a great point. With autographs or documents, and I can show you all kinds of, I always say, I really think they are investments. They do go, but buy what you like, buy what you enjoy, because you'll always be happy with it. Because if you're buying for an idea that I'm buying this now and it's going to be worth more later, sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not. And it's not necessarily like the stock market, it fluctuates as much. And autographs have, historically been a pretty good investment. But of course, there's things that change. There's people who are very popular in the 1920s or 30s. Talk about entertainment. How many people remember Theda Bara and Tom Mix and Tim McCoy? And so when they get forgotten, their value doesn't go up.
So there are some people that do it as an investment. Other people do it. I love it. We buy things every day because we like it, right? We buy clothes, we buy cars, we buy furniture, we paint our house certain colors because I like it. Right. Look at the pricing at kitchens, from $10,000 to hundreds of thousands of dollars. You buy it because you like it. Right? And so some of this stuff I'm thinking, okay, that's neat to be able to have, and just to have it to be able to talk. We have, as you know, we have this really old typewriter that we have in the back. And I have underneath some really old newspapers that are hanging on the wall. And I got to tell you, I look at that and it takes me back. It's a little bit before my time. But the most important thing for me is I look at it and I look at that and say, what are you going to do so your business doesn't wind up like this? And it is a reminder about yesteryear. And it also reminds me about tomorrow, about the things that we look for. Right. And so this is some really neat stuff. But if somebody just wants to be the average guy says, I just want to go buy something like this. Right. He can go to your auctions, to the site, and look around as they can to hundreds of thousands of places, say, that's really neat, or that's really neat.
Well, what's great about us, and you're mentioning places, is it is unique. He's not going to see that Thomas Jefferson document in any place in the world. And that's what makes, if you're collecting and you're strategic, and also each piece not only has a story, a lot of times the letter itself, the content behind it is unusual and unique. So the good news is, if you like that, I mean, you're not going to find this in any store. And what I mean by that is, this Beatles parking for this particular concert, there might be only a couple that even exist. And so that's what I love about something that you can't really say, oh, I saw that at JCP, or I saw that in Neiman Marcus. It makes it unique and one of a kind. If you go to the auction, we have them like quarterly, and we always getting new material. This is some material.
Let's see some more.
This is just some material that was coming in.
Tommy, how long do we have? 4 minutes.
Okay, yeah. No, this is something that just came in, and this is
Who's that?
This is actually, what's interesting is it's Jack Dempsey. It's a signed photo by Jack Dempsey, but it's early Jack Dempsey. It's about 1920s. I mean, it's still in the plastic. I could take it out, but it's a large size photo, and you can see the stance, and you can see the period. And sports is also, of course, kind of quite popular.
So, for instance, I look at something like this. You go, "That's really neat. I know the name," and then you might go, "Okay, I'm going to go buy that, and I'm going to go find out about it." So it's like, and you learn.
That's how you learn, right?
Yep.
Well, Jack Dempsey, of course, was world champion and
Yep.
a boxer and everything else, and was really popular. He had the personality. He even opened up restaurants at the time.
We got 2 minutes, so let's hurry up.
And then you got Frank James, which is Frank and Jesse James from the historical. And this is a signed document by Frank James. Or you have, let's see, I'm going quick here. Oh, well, you don't want to miss this one, Albert Einstein. And so you can see, and he had that small signature here, Albert Einstein. And
it's a little, folks, it's a little tiny signature.
It's on his stationery. If you look really quick on the paper, you see the blind stamp, which is his
stationery.
His personal stationery.
1939.
And then you'll see right here, like you said, the signature. And interesting enough, Albert Einstein, if you look at the end of after Einstein, you'll see a little dot.
Yes.
He always put that. It was a placement in time and space. And so you always see a little dot, almost always. I mean, there was occasion that it isn't.
People, so let's get on the other stuff over there.
Well, if I go quick,
yeah.
we'll save it for next time. But
okay.
The reason I mentioned Albert Einstein is we were talking about how do you know, and that's the kind of thing you look for. Is the little dot after the signature? Is there, and these are those little things that you know over time and you learn. So there's many items. I mean, and like you said, I mean, everything from art to engraving to coins, which we can go into another day, and these are obviously encapsulated, or these are what they call raw. Encapsulated meaning that PCGS and different companies actually encapsulate these coins and say this is what it is, an MS-65.
And sometimes the kids start off as a hobby, and
right.
then it grows into something that they really enjoy. And right. you obviously enjoy this, right?
I love it, and,
yes.
and I think that's what's great too. It is
yes.
a hobby that can become a business, but it's also something you can enjoy, especially on your free time if you have some. Some people might have a little more lately, but it's fun to do, and it's something that does have value. And if you have a good eye, it's a good investment.
And I hope your children get a good understanding of what you do and how history helps form tomorrow by knowing what we're doing today and yesterday. And we're going to wrap it up. David Gindy here with he is the collectible guy, and you can find him at Collectibles Auction or
oakauctions.com.
Say it again.
OAK auctions.com or One of a Kind Collectibles.
And you can go on the internet, find him, David Gindy, right here in beautiful downtown South Miami. David Gindy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And thanks for your friendship.
I appreciate it.
Tommy, thank you so much. And folks, again, this is Live with Miami's Community News. Have a great